The Limbourg brothers were young artists who were originally from what we now call the Netherlands. Through a series of events, they ended up living in France, where they worked for Jean de Berry, who was the brother of the Duke of Burgundy. Jean de Berry was a collector of books and artwork and commissioned the brothers for a few different projects, which he intended to keep for his own collection. Between 1405 and 1409, the Limbourg brothers completed what is now known as one of the most important holy manuscripts to survive from the Middle Ages, the Belles Heures, which translates to the Beautiful Hours. This book is an example of a book of hours, which were Christian prayer books, and is by far the most beautifully decorated available to us today. The artwork and decorations contained within these manuscripts are referred to as illuminations, perhaps because they bring life to the text and stories held within. As we can see, the illuminations from the Belles Heures are full of intricate design and technique. Jean de Berry later commissioned the brothers to complete another work, Les Très Riches Heures du Duc de Berry, or The Very Rich Hours of the Duke of Berry, which we will be highlighting here today. This was another example of a book of hours, which, unlike the Belles Heures, the brothers were unable to complete before they all died, along with Jean de Berry, likely from a wave of plague around 1416. It is not known for certain which illuminations the brothers were unable to finish themselves, but the rest were completed by other artists later on in the 15th century, with the book being finished in the 1480s. It wasn't until the 19th century that the book was rediscovered to live on in our art history books today. This book and the other works of the Limbourg brothers are considered classic examples of the international Gothic style of art, which was active during the late 14th to mid-15th centuries. Some characteristics typical of this style include a rich use of color and the inclusion of gold decorations. Artwork created in this style often utilize strange perspective in regards to landscape and space, but are very detailed in their inclusion of natural elements. Near the beginning of the manuscript, we find a detailed portrayal of the zodiac laid out. One may ask why the zodiac would be included in a book so closely connected to Christianity. The reason is that people at the time utilized the organization of stars in various ways, such as agriculturally and in the realm of medicine. We will see throughout the pages ahead that at the top of each calendar page is a chart showing relevant signs and degrees of the zodiac. One remarkable thing about these particular artworks is their depiction of accurate life during the Middle Ages in this area of France. In some of the pieces, especially, we find portrayed the juxtaposition of the life of the rich nobles and the peasants and laborers who lived in closer relationship to the agricultural landscapes which existed outside of the castles and palaces. In January, we see a depiction of the Duke of Berry himself in a scene of people gathered to share gifts in the palace hall. The Duke is adorned with a decorated blue robe sitting at the table, and some theorize that Paul, one of the brothers, may be portrayed as the man in the tilted gray cap. Behind the crowd, on the walls of the palace, are detailed paintings of knights at war. This may have been used as a reminder to those dwelling within and visiting the palace of stories considered important to the protection of their society. One can see in this particular calendar page the wealth of the kingdom and those who are benefiting from it. In contrast to this, if we turn to the February illumination, the artist has given us a snowy scene of peasants in midwinter living outside of the palace. The people we see here likely felt the cold differently than noble folk, and we see ways in which they tried to keep warm and survive. In the field behind, we see a man chopping wood, either for his own dwelling or possibly to sell. Behind him, another person walks a donkey along a road, likely carrying goods to market. In the foreground of the image, we find people very obviously battling the cold temperatures. To the right, we see a peasant wrapped in linens hurrying towards the shelter. And to the left, we find 3 peasants warming themselves by the fire, one being far more modest than the others in how highly they are lifting up their clothes. Each illumination of this manuscript is remarkable in its own way, giving us viewers a rare glimpse into the lives of people living in this time and place, specifically peasant folk who would not have often been portrayed in artwork. The manuscript currently lives at the Musée Condé in the Château de Chantilly, which is around 30 miles north of Paris, and the entire book can be viewed digitally through a link on their website.